Here at Lake Grove Presbyterian Church, we recognize the complexity of this season and are inviting all of us to reflect on our experience of this complicated and uncertain time.
Hi, everyone. Pastor Lillian here with Pastor Susan. And today our topic is anxiety. Susan, will you kind of lead us into our topic? Gosh, this is a heavy and difficult one.
Oh, Lillian, it really is. I know that almost every conversation I have of late, as a matter of fact, many in the last several months, anxiety has risen to the top. Like we just feel kind of a whole pervasive anxiety. Like there's a sense I should be worried, which actually is so interesting because there are genuinely things to worry about, right? Things that like, okay, how will I respond to a threat? How will I stay safe? Keep my family safe?
Mhm.
But it is kind of wild how we have all been experiencing an extra layer of that, and sometimes having a hard time having even our body shut down. We feel like we need to stay alert or anxious all the time. The ground keeps shifting, and it seems like there's something new to worry about every single day.
Right. I know that I carry the worry and the anxiety in my shoulders. So when you're saying, it's every day, we carry it every day. Yeah, we carry it, and often it manifests itself physically.
Yes.
So
Lily, that is such a good point and such a good reminder of the reality that this is a bodily experience. Anxiety, we can, I bet even just describing a few symptoms, I can actually make all of us feel it, kind of like if you breathe really short and shallow, or you hold your, even, or if you hold your breath. um, Imagine, running up a hill and your heart pounding. They are physical symptoms that just surround us. So one, it's helpful to remember, your body is trying to be your friend and help you see something that you need to, that might be a threat. But goodness, also though, it can kind of work a little bit in overdrive. And we want to have anxiety be our good friend, not a bad friend to us. And so keeping it in kind of a good, boundary. Okay, I have learned what I need to learn from you. And now I can make some wiser decisions with that information.
Mhm.
There's another thing that's been helpful to remember about anxiety, that it is an emotion that ebbs and flows. And sometimes, particularly when we're in the middle of it. And just imagine this, I'm certain that people have had a conversation like this with a loved one of, it's all right, it's all right. When you are in the middle of feeling really anxious, it is not all right. And you can't feel that. And sometimes even in the middle, it feels like it won't ever end.
Mhm.
But it's good to remember it will.
Mhm.
Like an emotion, it will move through you.
Mhm.
And so, like that, if we experience these things in our body, it helps to do things in our body that help, like that deep breathing talked about.
Mhm.
Even being able to put our feet firmly on the floor, curling our fingers around a cup to remind us physically where we are, and that we are okay.
Mhm.
We are going to be okay.
Mhm. I love that reminder. I think that's so important, that it ebbs and flows and the emotion can move through us. I think that is really important to remember, because sometimes we do feel like this is not going to end. Like there is no end in sight. It feels like it's today and tomorrow and next month, but that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's not the case. And another thing that's really helpful is if we can help ourselves understand, well, what am I really anxious about? And so to take a little bit of time, maybe to slow ourselves and say, if I got to the bottom of it, what is it?
Mm.
Is it, okay, if I am really anxious about meeting a group of friends and there's disagreement about mask wearing or what it might be, am I worried? Am I going to be rejected for how I feel? Is it that anxiety? And I, I kind of got a couple things going in this thought, but bear with me as we tease it out a little bit. It's helpful if you can get to the root of that and then say, okay, what would happen then? Say that there is disagreement about that. What will I do? And then being able to have, okay, I would say, well, this is how I feel about that. So this is the action I will take. I understand where you are coming from, but this is what I need to do to help yourself have a bit of a plan rather than feeling kind of this free for all anxious feeling. I don't know what I'm going to do, how I will be, but trying to help ask yourself, what will I do then?
Mhm.
And giving, in a sense, Lily, it reminds me of a previous conversation we've had on uncertainty, focusing on what we can control.
Yeah. And I love that. The suggestion is like, find a plan, like think through it. Don't get lost in just feeling anxious.
Yeah.
One thing you asked was, what causes, what makes
Yeah.
me anxious. And I just have to throw this in because social media these days
Oh,
can be a friend and a foe.
yes.
Um, I think that it is a great tool. It can help us feel connected to friends who, we've lost track of, maybe from years ago, or who live in a different city, different country. So that's really great. But it can also stir up and cause some anxiety. What do you think about that, Susan? And can we do the same thing as you were suggesting?
Right. That's a great point. And I think it's part of what makes this season difficult because some of the very same actions that are helpful to us also have an edge in them that can lead us down the wrong path.
Mhm.
So the connection that I'm longing for in social media, I can find that. But then if I start seeing it and just in the place we are in our current society and culture, there's a lot of anxiety producing things on there. And so it's good to pay attention and then speaking of plans, have a plan for that. I will check this for 5 minutes at whatever time so that you can limit that and then notice, how do I feel after I use it? Do I feel more connected or do I actually feel more anxious? So being able to discern, how is this affecting me? What
Mhm.
what else would you say?
Oh, no, I was just going to reiterate that point to be aware of how you're feeling and then name it, right? If being on social media or getting together with friends or whatever that activity, if it causes you anxiety, then to just say, I'm anxious,
Yeah.
and not to feel ashamed about that, just, I am anxious. Um, it did make me also think, I know that we mentioned that anxiety can be helpful in certain ways, but there's also that anxiety that overwhelms.
Hmm.
I know that we've talked often and said whenever there is um, an overwhelming sense of anxiety or that leads to depression or
Yes.
um, kind of further down, that seeking help is a good thing to do. It is a necessary thing to do, whether it's reaching out to the other pastors on staff or to a counselor. We know that we have just a great list of resources of clinical psychologists who are experts in the field, and that there's no shame associated to reaching out for professional help. It,
Absolutely. Thank you so much for highlighting that because that is so true. Because there can be where anxiety situations where anxiety is debilitating. And if it is in that season for you, please reach out for that help. And being anxious is a part of being human. So we can just realize I am human and I'm feeling this. If we are in some spots where maybe it feels a little bit counterintuitive, where there's something that I'd like to use this example, if I feel a little bit anxious about dogs and I see one coming towards me as I'm walking, what they found is that, okay, so my anxiety spikes as I see that dog. And so then I cross the street and I walk on the other side. I feel instantly better. The challenge is the next time I see a dog crossing coming down my way, I will feel that anxiety almost double fold. And so, counterintuitive to what we would think, like, okay, I feel safe, is actually to keep taking the step towards that anxiety. Now, obviously, we want to keep ourselves safe, be wise. But if we just avoid, and if we used an extreme example in this season of feeling like I don't want to go outside of my house at all, we are making the anxiety worse for ourselves. And let's get a little bit of help for that.
Yeah.
But if we can, stepping towards that, or the conversation that you've been dreading to have about, differences of opinion, whatever it might be, the more we delay it, the more that our anxiety can build. And so go ahead and step towards it in the safest, healthiest way possible. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And that's such a good illustration. And it also helps us with anxiety. Sometimes it's associated with feeling of lack of control. But if you're able to decide and choose, I am going to not cross the street and avoid. I'm going to take a step. Maybe it's just 3 more steps before I cross the street.
Right.
And then the next time, 4 steps, but it gives us a sense of agency.
Yes.
That can be comforting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. This is I think I found a spiritual practice that is helpful in this, and I'd like to share that, and then also some verses for us today. But when I heard this, John Ortberg, he is a pastor, and I heard him say this once: if you can worry, you can pray. And it's just that little frame. When we think of the verses of pray without ceasing, think, how would that be? That's impossible. But my goodness, I can turn a problem over and over and over and over in my mind. And so again, no shame, no like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're worrying about this again. None of that. Just the simple, gentle awareness. Lord, I'm worried about this. I give it to you. I give it to you. And turning that, just that little shift, I'm putting this in your hands, then worry can become unceasing prayer.
Mm-hmm.
There is a verse in Philippians. There's a few, but I want to share them with you. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. What a beautiful gift that is to be able to have that. We can turn to the Lord in prayer. Yes. And again, with no shame, no guilt. Did you see how that passage was bracketed in gentleness and nearness and peace? And so whatever we're worried about, we can know that God greets that with gentleness and nearness and peace.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Susan, for the good word and the reminder of our Lord's gentleness and peace, and that he receives our anxiety. So thank you for sharing very helpful tips and practical ways that we can manage our anxiety during this season.
So good to be with you. Thank you.
Well, and thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, take care.